All right, welcome my friends to the next episode here in the Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A here on the RDP YouTube channel. We do this every Saturday at 2:30 Mountain Standard Time here, where I give a few of my best top fitness lessons of the week, and we have the ability to chat back and forth, and you can ask questions as well. In this week's episode, we are discussing the top 6 ultimate game-changing lessons that I've learned over the years. Now, first, before I jump into these things, I want to preface this with saying that these lessons are things that took me years to understand, of compiling data and getting all sorts of pieces from the puzzle that I've been putting together for very long periods of time. And these were ideas that took me a long time to really understand and process and come to the belief of. So I'm going to be shooting these to you in very fast motion, quick tempo here. And as such, I don't expect most people to ever believe this stuff, because it's going to run very much not counter, but it's a little bit off center from the stuff that we usually think of how fitness works and the things that we need to focus on. So just wanted to put a little pin in that, kind of approach these things with a bit of an open mind. And you can take this information, let it sit in your mind for a while, let it process and digest, and then make your decisions on whether or not things actually are right for you. So before we jump into it, let's thank, again, the sponsors for today's episode. We have NOSC Suspension Strength Training Equipment. I always highly recommend, and World Fit Isometric Equipment. Down below in the description, I'll be referencing these things undoubtedly, and they are some of the best equipment that I use for my home gym. Here behind me, of course, none of it's really up on the walls because I have been taking photos for my next book on progressive calisthenics, so I needed kind of a very simple backdrop there, so everything was taken down, but it will be returning, and I am still using that stuff on a daily basis. Highly, highly recommend it. Check it out down below. All right, so lesson numero uno, number 1. And this, of course, is the biggest one that the entirety of Red Delta Project is founded on, which is that fundamental approach to fitness. The fundamental approach to fitness states that the way we usually think about fitness is instead a method-based approach, that your ability to lose weight and build muscle and improve your sports performance and everything depends on the method that you follow, what kind of diet you follow, what kind of exercise you do, what's your workout routine, what kind of exercise are you doing? Are you doing like hammer curls? Are you doing supinated curls? Like what kind of curling or exercises you're doing in your program and stuff? And not that that stuff isn't important, but it's actually not how fitness really works. And that's one of the biggest game changers out there, is because when we take a method-based approach, we're trying to find what's the diet that's going to get me results? What's the workout program that's going to get me results? When in reality, your results don't depend on what kind of diet or workout program you do. Instead, the reason why fitness works at all is because of the natural fundamental processes of both mother and human nature. And it's through influencing these processes through diet and exercise that we can get results. So it's not ultimately what you do, but rather or not this process, recognizing it, and then using whatever diet and exercise methods you wish and you see fit to most effectively impact those processes. Now, there's a whole lot more to say about this. I've got podcasts that I've already addressed my fundamental approach with. It goes way more in depth, but really quick recap is the fundamental processes that we have to recognize is, for training, we have a stimulus and then adaptation. So every time you do something, me opening and closing my hands like this is creating a stimulus in my hands. When you're exercising, when you're getting up out of a chair, everything you are exposing your body to in your environment and how you're asking it to perform is creating a stimulus saying, hey, body, I need you to adapt to accommodate this functional demand. So all forms of training, from ping pong to powerlifting, are simply about creating the stimulus saying, body, I need you to be able to do this thing. And then we adapt many different ways in order to accommodate that functional demand. So that's how exercise actually works. Then when it comes to diet, it's all about consumption versus utilization. Every aspect of nutrition, from fat, protein, calories, water, vitamins, minerals, everything is about we consume it in, the body breaks it all down into its components through digestion, and then it distributes and utilizes those nutritional components as the body sees fit, either passing it through, sometimes happens, storing it, in the case of like glycogen or fat, and sometimes, yes, even water, fat soluble vitamins as well, or utilizing it. So the entirety of our nutritional and healthy diet depends on that balance between those two things. And then the third process, of course, that of human nature, which I'll be getting into a little bit more detail later on, which is the benefit to cost ratios. How much we feel we're getting out of something versus how much we feel it's costing us for emotional drive and motivation. So those are the three things that actually are in charge of how your fitness works. I don't care what diet you follow. I don't care what exercise you're doing. I don't care how many sets and reps and whether you're lifting dumbbells or logs in a forest. I don't care if you're doing keto or paleo or vegan or just eating whatever you find at the local vending machine in your home at your office. Everything boils down to that process. And so a lot of people say, so it doesn't matter what I do? Of course. In fact, everything matters. Everything that you could possibly imagine in your life has some influence on that process. In fact, one of the videos I'm making for the YouTube channel here is one of the most important things you can buy to have a healthier diet and help control your weight isn't exercise equipment. It's not supplements. It's not some home delivery meal plan or anything like that. The single most important thing you can possibly buy for your improved diet, health, and weight management is dish soap. Seriously, you need dish soap if you want to have a healthy diet. Why? Simple, because a lot of your ability to have a healthy diet depends on managing your food environment. Because remember, a good diet only needs three things: what you eat, how much you eat, and when are you eating it. Now, if you want more control over those three things, the best thing you can do is prepare your own food. I'm not saying you can't go out and eat and things like that. I'm saying, but the more you prepare your own food, the more you're going to be in control of your diet and your weight. And in order to make it a lot easier to prepare your own food, you want to have an environment, aka your kitchen, that's clean and well suited for food preparation. Now, I've been in many people's homes as a fitness equipment delivery guy over the years. That's what I used to do in a previous life, is I used to build and set up home gyms. And without fail, those who seem to have the hardest time managing their health and their diet and their weight have really messy kitchens. Without fail, I could almost just point to it like, okay, you're out of shape and you've tried every diet under the sun, you can't make it happen. I bet you anything you've got a really messy kitchen with a stack of plates and pizza boxes all over, and you couldn't even find a clean pan if you wanted to cook something. I'd probably be right about 80% of the time on that one. But you find the people who are very healthy and fit, and I was like, bet your kitchen's pretty spotless. Like for them, it's like, oh, my kitchen's so dirty, and there's like a dirty coffee mug in the sink kind of thing. And a lot of it just boils down to, can you keep your kitchen clean? And you're not going to do that if you don't have dish soap. So this is just kind of a long-winded way of explaining how everything in our lives has some influence towards those processes. But the first big changing lesson is recognizing that it's that process that's actually in charge. Don't put too much of your attention on what's the right diet or what's the perfect workout program, or should I do this split training or that split training. All the answers you really need boil down to, how does this decision influence that process? Because that process is the most important thing. That's the thing that's in charge of whether you're losing weight or building muscle. That's the thing that's going to give you a workout program that you stick to or you can't stand to and you're going to abandon it in 2 weeks. That's the thing we have to always keep our needle pointed towards, because all decisions we're going to make, everything we consider, should boil down to, how does it influence those three processes? Because it's not about what you do, it's about those processes in motion. And that's lesson number 1. A couple folks coming on in. Sniff Rat, good to see you. CJ Watson coming in with a question. Let's see if I can get to some of these today. CJ Watson, hey, Matt, what's your opinion on fascial remodeling? Is it just a fancy term as to what we're already doing in training? Largely, it may very well be. It probably is one of those things that does exist. This is a lot of times how a lot of trends and things come about, is that someone will find something that is happening when we are making changes in our diet and exercise, like, oh, people who build muscle and lose weight and stuff like that, they observe something that's happening like fascial remodeling and stuff. But I would bet heavily that it's one of those things that is happening with normal training. It's kind of like I get a lot of questions from people saying, how do I strengthen my tendons in my body? Tendons connect the muscle to the bone. And to that, I always say, well, it's just do whatever you're doing to strengthen the muscle, because any sort of stress that you're putting on your muscle is also going through your tendon. And second of all, is tendon is usually way stronger than muscle to begin with. So usually you don't need to strengthen tendons. They're ridiculously strong in and of themselves. But a lot of times people will come across stuff on the internet saying, oh, to strengthen your tendons, you got to do this type of training and this kind of exercise and this kind of thing and this many sets and reps and stuff. And I think it's largely a waste of time, because by and large, it's like whatever you're doing for strength training is also strengthening tendons if it needs to be strengthened to begin with. So it's not something you need to pay attention to. All they're doing is saying, oh, wow, this thing is happening. Do we need to do anything to make that happen? Nope, you're already doing it. So have fun. Probably going to be the same thing. Put a pin in that, though. I'm not entirely sure. It's not something I would put too much weight on my opinion on that, but it does certainly sound like one of those things that would certainly be happening. Lucas B asking, hey, Matt, if I can't do full Pike push-up yet, should I work on push-up with some more? What's the plan here? Absolutely, yeah. Because remember, fundamentally, you're not really doing that much different from Pike push-ups to regular push-ups. You still have elbow extension with your triceps. You still have shoulder flexion with your deltoids and stuff. You're just kind of changing a little bit on the angle and where your weight distribution is. One thing that you can do, though, is Pike push-ups with your hands on an elevated surface. I've got one client who's making great progress in her Pike push-ups, and I initially started her off on a box that was like 20 inches high. And she just kind of down low, like she's in a push-up position, incline push-up position. She just pushes herself on back as if she's just kind of pushing herself away from a countertop. It's the same motion, and you just have less resistance. So if you like the Pike push-up, you like the way it feels in the shoulders and the range of motion and things like that, then you can do that, is just put your hands on an elevated surface that puts more weight onto your feet, and you'll have full access to the full range of motion, and then you can adjust the resistance that way. So that's the way to go about that I would address. But yeah, push-ups are still a very good, viable thing to do. One more before we get into point number 2. Distant Cry asking, what's the most important thing learn whilst training? All of these things, all 6 of these things. If you just jumping in right here, make sure to get the Red Delta Project podcast. That I always put the audio to these podcasts on the podcast directories a day or so afterwards, so you can catch up with that one. But like I was saying earlier, the fundamental approach to fitness is probably the most important thing, because that changes everything. Everything we think we know about diet and exercise changes when we understand it's not about what your diet is or what your exercise program is and stuff. It's all about those fundamental processes. Okay, so number 2. Like I said, it's all about the processes. Now, here's the thing to understand. Point number 2 is that everything in fitness, all the habits we engage in, diet and exercise, I'm changing my diet this way, I'm eating more of this, I'm eating do that, everything is simply about speed, the rate at which something is happening. Now, there's a lot of stuff out there in our fitness culture that say, oh, you have to train this way, because if you train this way, you make this thing happen. Some enzyme changes over, protein synthesis, whatever. Like, you start to make something happen in your body. Or if you eat this way, you make this other thing happen. Usually it engages in something like, you eat this way, you start burning fat, or you start storing fat, or whatever. That's usually the way that it is around there. It's like, basically the idea is, if you use this method, you make this thing happen, which is complete bunk. It's 100% BS. Because nothing in fitness happens on or off. Okay? There's not really these switches and stuff. In fact, I would go so far as to say this. Brace yourself for this nugget of wisdom. Nothing about diet and exercise, nothing you eat, no training possible, nothing you do, there is nothing about diet and exercise that ever makes anything happen. I'll say that again. Diet and exercise doesn't do anything at all. And what I mean by that is it doesn't make anything different happen. It doesn't make something happen new. There's no switch. There's no, oh, now I'm starting to burn fat. Oh, now I'm starting to build muscle. Oh, now I've got this hormone pumping. No, nothing like that. The entire reason why anything in fitness works is because your diet and exercise habits influence that fundamental process, which means they're speeding up or slowing down the things that are already happening. Everything you need to make happen, to make the changes you want to see in your body, everything is already happening completely on autopilot. You have no control over these things at all. You have no control over whether you have protein synthesis, whether you're burning fat, whether you're going to have burning fat versus sugar. All these things, you have very, very little control over it. And your body is the one who's determining these things. All you're doing when you change your diet and exercise habits is you're speeding up or you're slowing down that process or part of that process. So that's why every weight loss strategy ever with any diet does the exact same thing. It slows down your rate of caloric consumption. They all do the same thing fundamentally. If it doesn't do that one thing, it doesn't work, full stop. Or it could be like, okay, I'm starting to build muscle. You've taken that protein synthesis and the need to build muscle that's already happening to everybody 24/7, and you're speeding it up. You created some sort of a stimulus that says, you got to kick this sucker into high gear. So that's a very liberating thing, because a lot of ideas out there that are very dogmatic say, oh, if you don't do this, you're not going to make this thing happen. Oh, if you don't do that, you're not going to make this thing happen. I was talking one time with a gentleman who was exhausted and tired. He's like, oh, God. And he was clearly struggling. And I was asking him about diet and exercise and like, when's the last time he ate stuff? And he was doing this really, really regimented form of fasting and dieting and stuff. I was like, I don't know if that's really your right thing, dude. It's your energy level in these workouts is really low. You're not feeling good. You're getting brain fog later in the, I would change it. Oh, no, I have to do it this way or else I'm not going to burn fat. That's like saying I have to go for a run or else I'm never going to breathe, right? Like if you're running and suddenly you're getting out of breath and you're like, oh boy, yeah, I'm really out of breath. Good, now I'm breathing. It's like, no, you're always breathing. Same thing with your heart rate. Like, oh, my heart rate monitor, oh, wow, holy smokes, 140 beats per minute. My heart started beating. All right, great. That's exactly the attitude these people take, where it's like, if I do this, I'm not going to make that thing happen. It's not at all how the body works. Everything you need to have happen in fitness always happens completely on autopilot, per the laws of Mother Nature. It's how your body works. All we're doing when we change diet and exercise is we're influencing the process to slow down or speed things up. That's all we can do. That's the only power you've got, which can be very powerful, especially when compounded over time. But you can't turn on or switch off things. You don't need to make anything happen. And when we get clarity, over understanding that, we understand that, no, your results do not entirely depend on whether you get that workout today. You don't have to force yourself to go for that run, even though it's 30 below and snowy, or when you feel like crap or anything. You don't need to force yourself nearly to the degree you think you do for a lot of these things, because everything that's happening is already happening. And all you're going to do is slow down and speed things up. And there's a million ways you can do that. There's a lot of ways. So you don't have to force yourself to do things you don't want to do, especially if you don't have to do it, simply because everything that needs to happen is largely happening anyway, and you're just speeding and slowing things up. A couple more questions. Jordan Wade, good last name there. Matt, I finally made it to live stream. What do you think of CrossFit style workouts, AKA circuit training? I like circuit training, but always remember, my friends, that exercise programs, fundamentally, what they do is they teach you be able to do the thing I'm asking you to do. Excuse me as I spill my water. So I like any kind of exercise and workouts, but it all depends on what is appropriate for your goals and objectives. Now, I had a very brief stint where I was doing the CrossFit stuff. I even got my level 1 certification, my $2,000 t-shirt. I went down to Vegas for it and everything like that. But I ultimately abandoned it largely because I kept finding myself going through these workouts going like, I don't give a flying crap about my ability to do burpees. I don't care about, like, if I'm in this game to build muscle and strength. Why am I going for a mile run in the middle of the workout? This feels like a complete waste of time because it has nothing to do with what I want. I felt like if I was doing a workout, it's like, okay, you're going to do these push-ups, great. And you're going to do these squats, awesome. And then you're going to go play chess for 20 minutes. Okay. Why? It's like, well, chess is so good for the mind. It teaches you strategy and stuff. I'm like, yeah, but I don't care. Why am I wasting my time playing chess? Then you're going to go to this piano lesson, and then you're going to go and you're going to do another 100 push-ups. I'm like, why? So to me, it was always like, there's so many things here I just don't care about. And that's what it always kind of felt like. I always liked it very much though, because as a coach and a trainer, I would get people all the time who are like, I just want to be fit. Well, what does that mean to you? I don't know. I just want to be fit. I just want to be in better shape. I just want to be fit. Nothing specific. That type of training is great because it's literally like, I don't care. I just want to work my body. Great. Just do fuck all. Just do whatever, and it's going to fit the bill. When you don't have specific goals, you don't need specific workouts and programming because you just don't care what you do and what you're going to get out of it. You just do everything or do whatever you want. Because when you don't have a target, throwing that dart will land anywhere. And you're like, great. It's kind of like the old adage of the best way to always hit your target is to throw the projectile and then call whatever it hits the target kind of deal. So I think it's great for that sort of thing. It's also good for exposing a lot of people to things as well. Because I've known people who've gotten into that space. And then over years, they're like, it was good. But then I started to realize I was much more into this type of training. I didn't really care so much for this other type of training. I'm like, great. So give that up and do the other stuff that you want to do. And that's a good way to hone things in. But and the last thing is, don't race the clock, folks. Unless you're doing things that don't require much skill, racing the clock is just going to be sloppy kind of stuff. Steve Colomers, hey, Matt, if I'm remembering correctly, you're going to work on a book focused on weighted calisthenics. Is that still the plan? When might it be released? Appreciate all the content. Good question, Steve. Yes and no. So that's what my gym here is all built around. You see, I've got my bodyweight master. I've got a sheet over all my shelves and stuff. This is my photography studio for all the images I'm making for that next book, which is focusing on progressive calisthenics and weighted calisthenics. Now, I was originally going to make 4 books because there are 4 disciplines in grind style calisthenics. There's progressive calisthenics, weighted calisthenics, what's in that water? Suspension calisthenics, and overcoming isometrics. So I've already put out suspension calisthenics recently and overcoming isometrics. Well, it's the general grind style calisthenics book. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put out a book for weighted and a book for progressive. But when I started outlining out weighted, I was like, there's just not enough content that needs to be said about weighted calisthenics to fill a whole book. And most of the stuff that would go into that book would be in progressive calisthenics anyway. So all I'm doing is combining them into one book together. And so that way it's not going to be a separate book for weighted calisthenics. It's going to be a section of that book. So you get a 2-for-1 price on that sort of thing. Okay, let's continue on here. Let me grab some water. I think it's water. All right, point number 3. Point numbers 1 and 2, it's a fundamental approach, not a method-based approach in fitness. Everything in fitness is about speed, not about whether or not something is happening or not. And number 3, and this was one of the biggest game changers for my strength training workouts, is recognizing that muscle is fundamentally controlled by mind more than anything else. Now, like a lot of folks out there, I used to think that my muscles worked according to the exercises that I was doing. Again, I had a previous life. My introduction into fitness got started when I didn't even read bodybuilding magazines. I worked in the fitness equipment field. In a small little shop that built and sold home gyms. I could build a home gym with my eyes closed with all the cables and everything like that. It was very handy with my hands. And so I grew up with the idea of like, okay, this attachment works the triceps. This piece of equipment here, this is for working your legs. This attachment here or this type of exercise does this to the muscle. And so for many years, whenever I would work out, I always wondered why Like sometimes I would do an exercise and it would feel awesome in a muscle. Like, wow, I really got it in the chest that time. And then I would do the same exercise a week later. And it's like, I barely felt it in the chest at all. Like, what the hell? Like, it was the same exercise. Shouldn't it be doing the same thing to the muscle? So my muscles or my workouts were always kind of hit and miss as far as how they felt and how my performance was. And it's like, oh man, these squats, now I feel it in my knees. And before I felt it in my quads, and what the heck's going on? It was always all over the place until, and this is one of those, again, things that just evolves over years and years and years of understanding various things and learning information from various people. It finally sunk through my thick skull that no, the exercise doesn't control the muscle. When you're doing bicep curls, it's not the curl that's making the bicep contract or the dumbbell in my hand. That fancy preacher curl bench that I love working out on, that preacher curl bench isn't the thing telling the muscle to work hard. It's just the vehicle. Instead, it's your brain, which totally makes a lot of sense when you just simply read a basic human physiology textbook, because it's not the muscular system, it's the neuromuscular system. And you just go to any anatomy class, any human physiology class, exercise science 101. They'll first start off saying, here's how your muscles work. And they don't start talking about barbells and dumbbells. They're not talking about exercise even. They're like, you got this thing called a brain that connects to your spinal cord. That is called your central nervous system. And then it branches out through your peripheral nervous system and has these things called motor units, where you have a neuron associated with various muscle fibers, and the signal coming from your brain down your spinal cord through your central nervous system to your motor units is controlling which ones work, to what degree, and how many, and what kind of frequency and coordination. And that's how your muscles engage and work. And understanding this is such a big game changer, because if we are always looking at what exercise works this muscle, what exercise is going to build this muscle and stuff, then we're totally putting the cart before the horse, because you're building a dependence on things to make your muscles do something that doesn't fundamentally make your muscles do anything. If there's a barbell on the floor and I'm going to go deadlift it, there's nothing about that barbell that's telling my erectors to fire and for me to pack my shoulders down and back. So I could lift that barbell all day long, and if my brain is not creating a signal telling my back muscles to work to keep my shoulders packed, there's no reason for them to be packed. There's nothing that's going to make that happen. But the second I understand intellectually, oh, I need to make my muscles work through focused concentration, oh, now they're always going to work. They're always going to be engaged in that exercise and the other exercise. And then the bottom line is you have far more control over what muscles are working, how well they're working, to the degree that which they're working, and how hard you can push them. The exercise is important, but it's just the vehicle that we're using. If I arrive at an airport, I don't say I got here because I have a purple pickup truck. Because then what ends up happening is we get into that method-based approach again. And then people are like, well, how do I get to the airport? Well, you need to drive a purple pickup truck. Don't worry about the directions on how to actually get there. You may not know how to get there from, the Antarctic or anything. But if you think that, oh, you get to the airport because of a purple pickup truck, now you're becoming dependent on a method, which may not be suitable for you. And you're becoming dependent on a method that ultimately may not have very much to do at all with your ability to actually get what you want. But the moment you start understanding that it is your mental concentration that engages and works your muscles appropriately, you gain so much more control over the safety, the effectiveness, and the quality of every exercise and workout you will ever do. That's why I stated in my book, Overcoming Isometrics, that the information in that book can potentially change and improve every exercise, set, rep, and workout you do for the rest of your life. Because that's what Overcoming Isometrics is all about, is improving that neural drive, your tension control, your ability to gauge and control your muscles proactively at will instead of reactively crossing your fingers and hoping for the best with every workout that you do. It's about gaining far more control so you can get far better results. And as a nice bonus, workouts feel so much better too. Oh my gosh, the workouts are amazing in their satisfying flavor, their sensile, their sensory information that are coming to you. It's like, wow, these dips feel amazing. And that's one of the great things about it is there was a time when, like, if I had a good workout 2 or 3 times a month, I was happy. Now it happens every single time without fail, because I have so much more of that control due to overcoming isometrics, especially because we can gain that control many different ways. But I don't know of any way from overcoming isometrics that is nearly that effective. When I started getting into overcoming isometrics, I understood the need for that type of control. So I was doing other things that kind of gave me some more control, and it was a process and stuff. When I got into isometrics, and I remember I was doing rows, I felt more tension control and engagement in my back from that within 2 days than I had in the previous 2 years. I shortcutted it that much. And I recognized what was happening because I understood that it is the mind that drives the muscle, not the exercise the other way around. All right, let's see. More questions here. Jordan Wade, again, I like the hat, man. What do you think about total repetition workouts, like 100 rep push-ups, pull-ups, and squats? I like them a lot, actually, and I'm getting more into them to the point where I've even told a lot of clients these days where I'm like, look, when I give you a repetition number, especially if they're kind of feeling a little off that day, I give you full permission to just break it up however you want to do it. Because a lot of the stuff in working out and workouts is, a lot of the evidence suggests that it's like just getting a total amount of work done, not necessarily kind of how you go about it. So I give clients that all the time. I'm like, okay, you've got a total of 30 pull-ups to do. And they'd be like, okay, great. And I'm like, I don't care how you do these. In fact, I give them a lot of like freedom and flexibility. You could do them on the straight bar. You could do them on the rings. You can do them on the grip grenades. You could do them on towels. You could do archer style pull-ups. You could do assisted pull-ups. You just do whatever you want. I just want 30 pull-ups, however you like. And that gives them enough structure that they have to do something of a general direction, but it also gives them a lot of creativity so that they can engage the muscles and using the exercise kind of how they see fit in a playful way. Usually when it comes to total workouts, I usually give them about 30 repetitions. If you look at a lot of the most popular strength and muscle building programs, you're usually finding total workloads of an exercise around the 25 to 30 rep range. You know, things like 5x5, 3x7, 6x4, you know, all these types of training routines that people have long been using. And it's like, you just can't go wrong with this program. You're always falling around in that mid to upper 20 rep range for total amount of work volume. And that's certainly not a dogmatic rule you have to follow. I'm going to do 100 different pull-ups today. Okay, great. Go for it kind of thing. But don't get too hung up on a high number. Usually that sweet spot is around the mid to upper 20s for in most cases. Just my 2 cents there on that one. One more question before we get into point number 4. The game car. Hey, dude, just got here. What have I missed so far? Don't forget, check out the audio that I repost on the RDP podcast and your local podcast directories. But again, let's quickly recap. Number 1, it's not about what your diet and exercise is how you can influence the fundamental processes of mother and human nature. And that's the fundamental approach to fitness. That's what all of RDP is based on. And you can basically have the freedom to do whatever diet and exercise programs and methods you like that can most effectively influence that process. Number 2, it's all about the speed at which you can influence that process. There's nothing about diet and exercise that does anything unique. You don't turn anything on or off or anything. All you're doing is speeding up or slowing down things that are already happening. So you don't need to feel like, oh, if I don't do this, nothing happens, or this will definitely happen if I do this, because that's not how fitness actually works. Number 3, muscle is controlled by your mind, not the actual exercise or the equipment. And the more you gain that control through your focus and concentration, the safer, more satisfying, and much more effective your workouts are going to be. Okay, point number 4, game-changing things. And this one was kind of a more recent one. So if we ever think of like the body as a machine, right? And I always say the body's like a car, it's a machine and stuff. The mind is the computer that controls the machine. Okay, so our muscle is the mechanics, the wheels, the transmission, the cylinders, and the engine and stuff. Our mind is the electronics that govern everything. But there's a third level, and this one is incredibly important and largely dismissed, and that is emotional fuel. You could have the best Ferrari in the world, but you're not going anywhere with an empty fuel tank. And that is because human beings are fundamentally emotional creatures. And I know we've got those shirts out there and you see this, facts aren't feelings and feelings aren't, as important as facts, which is, I get what they're saying with it and stuff, but the bottom line is the entirety of your choices that you're going to make in life, especially when it comes to diet and exercise, are going to depend extremely heavily on your feelings. To the point where I would say nothing is ever going to change until you change how you feel. Until you change how you are on an emotional level, nothing's going to happen. And when it comes to human motivation, it all boils down to how we feel about what we're doing, a cost to benefit ratio. If you feel there's a big benefit per the cost, you're going to have motivation to do that thing, whatever it is, like crazy, even if it doesn't even work. I mean, how many people out there are doing a billion, gazillion ab exercises thinking because they feel it's going to do something for their midsection. They feel like it's going to do something for belly fat, even though factually we know it doesn't do anything and that it's not going to do so much. I could give them all the science. I can do all the lectures and how things work. Doesn't matter. If you feel it's doing something, you're going to do it. It's that simple, because we are largely running on our emotional state, not our intellectual state. That's not to say what you know isn't important. Of course it is, very much so. But boy, you give me the ability to change how someone feels about diet and exercise and stuff, that's going to change everything. But you can give them all the information in the world, but if they don't change their feelings, nothing happens. Case in point, right? I'm a big carbonated beverage guy. I love my carbonated beverages. I drink a lot of these seltzer waters and stuff. Grew up with diet soda, and the many years I've been like an energy drink guy. Love my Monster energy drinks and stuff. Usually drinking about 2 a day. And every once in a while, I'll give them up just for like a bit of a challenge. My family has a lot of Catholic roots, so my mom would call up sometimes and be like, "What are you giving up for Lent?" And I'm like, "Oh God, that's right. Oh, I don't know. I'll give up my Monsters for Lent. Why not? It'll be a challenge." She's like, "Good." And I'll give up Monsters for Lent, and I'll want it for a few days, and then I'll just get used to it and go through it. And they're like, "Good, Lent's over, back to it," and I'd be drinking them again. And I know a lot of people are like, "You shouldn't be drinking that." I'm like, I've given them up. I don't notice any benefits at all. No difference at all. I drink them. I don't notice anything really too much. Nothing really changes, but I just really enjoyed them. And this has gone on for many, 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 many years. I started drinking Monsters when I became a personal trainer, and had to be up at 4 a.m. and stuff. It's the only way I could get through the morning half the time. But I probably haven't had a Monster energy drink for the past 3 months. Why? I didn't learn anything. I didn't watch some sort of Netflix documentary that made like, "Oh no, it's the worst thing for you," or anything like that. It's just one day I was like drinking my Monster and I was like, "I'm over this. I'm done." And that was it, because how I felt about those Monsters changed. They went from, "Ooh, Monsters. Oh yeah, filling up my car. I'll go grab a Monster. Oh boy, it's the best thing ever," to just like, I'm kind of over this. And that was it. And I have no cravings. I have no desire for it. I haven't noticed any benefits from giving it up. It's not like my energy levels have changed or anything, but that's all it took to change, was how I felt. So understanding that we humans are fundamentally emotional creatures gives us a lot of power, because I don't care what you know. I don't care how many diet books you read. I don't care how many PhDs you have in exercise science. Your ability to get what you want is largely going to be determined by your emotional state. If you want to really change something, you have to change how you feel. Because if you don't change how you feel about pushing yourself in the gym, about how you feel about certain foods and stuff, nothing's going to really happen. And if you do try to force it, it's going to be a hell of an uphill battle, my friend. Really, really hard uphill battle. And looking back on my own life, and you could probably experience this for yourself, like anytime you've had a big change in your life, a big change where suddenly you were adopting a lot of different habits and stuff, I would bet anything what happened was you changed how you felt about something. Something happened that changed your emotional state. And suddenly the things that were so hard became a lot easier to do. I could never go to the gym, but suddenly, I've noticed the girls are looking at me and, I'm getting more attention and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, muscle makes me feel good about myself. Huh? And then you go to the gym and you're like, I like watching, got a good pump going on here. And you're looking at yourself in the mirror and suddenly, you feel different about exercise, and you'll blast through doors. You'll walk through walls to go work out. You didn't learn anything. You changed how you felt about it. So feelings are incredibly important. And if we're not going in the direction we want to go, we have to investigate how we are feeling and do the inner work to change and at least examine our emotional state about how we feel things. I know it's kind of cliche, like, tell me how you feel about doing this, sit on the couch kind of thing. But I swear, you have more power over changing how you feel about something. Whew, it is a complete life changer. And you don't have to bother too much with running around on Instagram or YouTube trying to figure out what's the secret that I need to be taught in order to do these things. All right, let's get to some more questions here. Struun is asking, if I'm in a 500 calorie deficit, I don't feel hungry enough to eat up to that deficit for that day. Should I hit those numbers or just accept I'm good for the day? Yeah, good for the day if you're trying to lose weight. Always remember that calorie balance or calorie estimations are just that, estimations. And to a large degree, you can be off by a lot. In fact, a lot of times when people are looking at their calorie estimations, I usually recommend going for big numbers. I had someone one time tell me, it's like, I'm in a 200 calorie deficit for the day. No, there's no possible way your caloric measurements are accurate enough to know that. Even in a lab, it's hard to figure that out, let alone in real life, because it could be 200, you could be 500 under, you could be 500 over. It could certainly be possible because it's so hard to be able to measure and accurately track both caloric intake and expenditure. You're getting a very rough estimate at best. So you're using it as a general estimation, but if you're good, you're good. Don't feel like you should eat up to that number. A lot of times when people are really like, I want to lose weight, I'm like, shoot for 1,000 calorie deficit. And like, isn't that a kind of extreme? It's like, it's probably the best way we can ensure we're at least in some sort of a deficit. Because if you shoot for 1,000 calorie deficit, some days you could be in a deficit of 200 calories. Some days it could be 1,800 calories for all we know. It's really, really hard to figure that stuff out. So don't go too hard by the numbers is basically what I'm saying. Mariano, it's good to see you, my friend. Excuse me, I drink up. Hey, Matt, I think the future of strength training is to be convinced of its application in life. Few people keep the habit of working out without a practical application. At least it was my mental barrier. That's a very good point, Mariano. I love how you phrase that, because one of the things that we have to get from a healthy lifestyle is benefit throughout life, throughout our entire life. To me, it's nice to be in the gym and be like, oh, I just lifted a heavier load on this leg press, and oh, I feel better about things when I'm, working out, this cardio workout stuff. Okay, great, wonderful. But do you have benefits everywhere? And sometimes people will email me or they'll tell me in the gym when I'm training, it's like, this is good, but man, I'm like standing better. I'm breathing better. I'm walking upstairs better. I don't have back soreness in the middle of first thing when I wake up anymore. I'm not stressing out about food. I'm able to just walk more casually. I'm not like hobbling around. Like all these benefits they have, like the big one that often gets tossed around is people will go on a flight and they're like, I took my luggage and I put it in the overhead bin and it just went right up. It wasn't a struggle to get up there. It's like, yeah, there you go. And I really think that's a very important aspect of an effective diet and exercise program, is it shouldn't just improve what you do in the gym. It should improve everything that you're doing all the time. That's one of the reasons why technology has become so prolific. Is back when I was growing up, back in 1997, it was like technology and using computers was such a narrow defined thing that most people saw no point in using computers. Like, I don't need to use spreadsheets. I don't need a word processor. I don't need, to write code for a game or whatever. What the hell do I need a computer for? But now, of course, we have, smartphones and stuff. It's like we use these things for everything, from ordering coffee to using a a stopwatch to managing our calendar to everything. The reason why technology is so prolific is because it is used for everything. And so that's why I'm a big fan of, again, mastering that tension control and stuff, because when you improve how well you can use your muscles, you improve everything you do with your muscles. It shouldn't just be the exercise. It should be everything. I had someone one time where I was talking about the tension control and improving your neuromuscular proficiency. And they were like, well, come on, Matt, like you don't actually work on like walking better, right? I'm like, well, yes, I do. Of course I do. I work very hard on improving how well I walk. And I walk a hell of a lot better now than I used to. My posture's a lot better. I'm driving with my hips more. I'm engaging my hamstrings more. I'm walking taller. I'm using my arms in a much more casual way versus hunching over. My walk now is way better than it was before. So yes, I'm doing everything better. And I think you're absolutely right, Mariana. We want things to move into improvement for everything, not just what we're doing in the gym or with an exercise. Outstanding observation. Keep calm and let me help you. Ask thoughts on vegan diet while resistance training. So a friend of mine is actually vegan, and I was asking him about it the other day, and he was like, actually, I'm kind of coming off of it a little bit, for some health reasons. And he's got a couple of nagging issues that he thinks it might help if he's not so strict on the vegan sort of thing. And he's had great success with it. You certainly can, because again, remember, it's all about that fundamental process. Your ability to be healthy and get results does not depend on whether you're vegan or not vegan, any more than it depends on whether or not you have a purple pickup truck to get to the airport or not a purple pickup truck to get to the airport. It's just a vehicle. So yeah, you have to know what you're doing. Anytime you're using a diet with any sort of restrictive approach to it, you've got to work harder to make it decent, to get everything you need. But it's certainly possible. And these days it's so popular that it's certainly a lot easier than it used to be. But I always tell people the same thing. It's not necessary. You don't have to do it if you don't want to do it. And my friend, he was like, yeah, I've got to make some better food choices, because his whole approach was, for environmental animal welfare kind of things. It was never about health and fitness. So he's like, I got to make sure now I'm getting animals raised humanely and things like that. I was like, okay, very good. So he's still sticking to his fundamental priorities, his principles. But so he's finding ways around it. But the bottom line is, like all diets, like it's not necessary. So only do it if you feel compelled and you want to do it. But you can make it work or not. It's really, honestly, not that important. Ben, hey Matt, what types of people do you train more? Average Joes or confirmed athletes? I always much prefer average Joes. I know a lot of times in the training sector and stuff, people are like, I can't wait to train athletes. I want to train, Olympic level athletes and stuff. And they put it on their profile, celebrity trainer, celebrity sports star trainer, even though they just, told this one, third string guy on the 49ers how to do a push-up better or something like that. But I've always wanted the average Joes. Why? Because I'm an average Joe. I've always seen myself as an average Joe. I always looked at the athletes in school and thought, these guys are so lucky. They've got coaches. They've got people telling them how to train and what to do and motivate them and push them and stuff. What about guys like me? Like, I suck as an athlete. I have very low coordination. I've always been very bad, but I still want to be in shape. I still want to pursue health and fitness. So my motivation for a lot of the things I do is that because I believe that the ability to condition and strengthen the body should be something that everyone has access to, regardless of their station in life. I don't care if you're rich or poor, living in Pakistan or in the middle of Manhattan. Doesn't matter your circumstances. Everybody should be able to say, I want to get in better shape and I can do it. Everybody on the planet should have that ability. But unfortunately, so much about our approaches to fitness now are so dogmatic and so high maintenance that it's only available to a select few who are willing to do, quote, what it takes. But again, that's the method-based approach. The fundamental approach says, yeah, anybody can do this to some degree. No, not everybody can have abs and become a professional athlete, but everyone can get stronger. Everybody can feel better. Everybody can lose weight or what have you that they want. And that's why I like the average Joes, because these are, quote, everybody, not just the people who is like, yeah, I've been playing Division, 1 football or, I've been an athlete my entire life. I'm like, okay, you've got it a lot easier than other people. All right, let's see what we can do here. So we got the emotional fuel taken care of, 2 more to go. The fifth thing that really changed things for me, because I was always a hard work always pays off kind of guy. In fact, most of the time, my approach to fitness was, I don't care what I do, but it's gotta be hard. It's gotta be really, really difficult to do. I used to do things purely because they were hard and making things harder. It's like, I'm going to go for a bike ride today. Okay, great. Oh, and I'm going to wear, a hoodie, even though it's 90 degrees out. And I'm not going to bring any water. And I'm not going to wear shoes or gloves, because that way the handles and the pedals tear at my feet. And I'm going to go at the hottest time of the day. And I'm going to make sure I don't eat beforehand, so that way I'm hungry. Basically, whatever made me work harder was something I was all about. And it's like, oh yeah, so much effort. Like, look at all this hard stuff I can do. Unsurprisingly, it didn't work so well, or it worked to some degree, but it was a lot of effort. And instead, again, coming from a fundamental approach to fitness, is recognizing that you've got to influence those fundamental processes, but it does not depend on how hard you work. If you can make a big impact on those fundamental processes with very little effort, you're going to get a hell of a lot better results versus a small influence that takes a lot of effort. So efficiency is one of the big keys. That's one of the representations of the delta. The triangle is a very efficient shape. It's only 3 sides. It's the least number of sides you can have in a shape and still have a shape. Yet it's also extremely resilient as far as a structural shape. That's why a lot of times you see triangles and things like bicycle frames, airplane frames, anytime when you find like bridges and stuff, it's like, we need a lot of strength, but not a lot of material. You usually find some triangular applications being had there. So it's not about work and effort. In fact, the less work you have to do to be productive, the better. Of course, work is important. It's vital, absolutely. But it was a big changer when I stopped thinking that hard work has inherent value, because hard work is not valuable in and of itself. It is not an asset. In fact, in many cases, it is a liability. One of the biggest reasons why people are not getting the results they want is because they're working too damn hard. They're putting in way too much time and way too much effort for too little productivity. And whenever you've got a lot of investment and not a lot of return in anything in life, you're not going to have good results in anything you can sustain, be it in business, relationships, or fitness. A lot of input without much output is a failed proposition. But when we have the attitude of, I'm just going to work my way there, I'm going to be the hardest worker in the room, that kind of attitude, all you're doing is you're trying to literally run at a wall as fast as you can and see how close you can get to it before you stop and hurt yourself. You're playing chicken with an immovable object. It's not going to end in your favor. You can't win this battle. So instead of prioritizing work, prioritize productivity. That's why I created Overcoming Isometrics book, because Overcoming Isometrics makes the productivity of your workouts skyrocket, even though it takes a fraction of the work and effort. Micro workouts, same kind of idea. The idea behind micro workouts was not to create short workouts. It's to get really clear on what the objective of your workouts is, so you can be as productive as possible. And most of the time, when you have that clarity of your objective, you find that you can accomplish that in a fraction of the time and effort that you would otherwise spend. And so having that focus on productivity instead of effort is a total game changer, because there's no guarantee that a lot of effort is going to even pay off. You can work out for an hour, blood, sweat, and tears, and exhaust yourself and accomplish very little. But at the same time, if you know what you're trying to accomplish, you can work out for 5 minutes and be like, yeah, I got that done. And you had a more productive workout. It's all about those objectives that I talk about in my book, Micro Workouts. Shameless plug, the link is down below for that. But that's what's most important, productivity, and then let however much amount of work is necessary be the amount of work necessary. This is a thing that's kind of, I like to see this. It's on social media a little bit more these days. I see more trainers talk about this, of don't be one of these folks who's like, I'm going to work out for this amount of time, or I have to do these many push-ups, or I have to run these many miles and so forth. Rarely are those things really contingent upon actually getting results, or the other way around, rather. Instead, have the objective of what are you trying to accomplish, and then just do however much work you need in order to accomplish that. Yeah, sometimes it's going to be a good amount. Sometimes it's going to be a lot of work. But sometimes it's also not going to take very much, and you're like, great, I'm done. No need to spend needless work and effort for that sort of thing, because it's just going to be wasteful. You're just increasing the cost to the workout. And like I said, it's all about that cost to benefit ratio for your motivation. Let's see. Michael Drop Weight Daddy asks, hey, Matt, being a cyclist, what has been your longest and hardest trek? Oh, a couple of different ones. Well, my longest ride was 120 miles on a road bike. So if we're talking actual distance, that one was on the whim. That was spur of the moment. I didn't train for it. I didn't plan for it. I didn't even know I was going to ride that far until I was about halfway through it. A buddy of mine was training for an Ironman, and he called me up the night before. He's like, I'm going to go for a bike ride tomorrow. You want to come? Yeah, sure. Okay, see you then. Click. And so we went out for this bike ride. And after a while, I'm like, oh, we're going a ways here. We stopped off at a gas station. I'm like, okay, water, get a soda, granola bars. I'm like, so how much we going for here, just to know if I need one granola bar or should stock up? And he's like, oh yes, we're going to be doing this path. It's probably going to be about 115 miles. I'm like, what? 100? Really? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, then I'm going to get some more granola bars. And yeah, that was a good ride. I liked that a lot. That wasn't the hardest by any stretch. It was a fairly casual ride. But yeah, 120 miles. That was fun. Thankfully, we stayed largely to the east of Denver, which meant it was a lot of flat prairie plains and stuff like that. That's the thing about cycling here in Colorado. You go to the east, flat as a pancake. It's like Kansas. You go to the west, there's nothing flat out in the Rockies. You're either going up or down. And that was my hardest trek by far. Was last year, there was a bike ride from Copper Ski Resort to Vail. And that was in the Rockies. And that was, I got lost several times on that one. And I was not prepared. It was like 98 degrees. That was an ugly, ugly ride. That was the first time I'd ever asked strangers for water and food and things like that. I wasn't really in trouble, but I was kind of in that place of like, if I'm not careful, this is how people die in these mountains. Like the Rockies are not the safest place to be when you're starting to get in trouble. And that's kind of where I was starting to go. But that was 12 hours, on the bike, and that was exhausting. Fun fact, the ISO chain video course that Dragon Door put out, I put it out, Dragon Door published it. So I started making those videos the day after that ride, and I look absolutely terrible. And I was like, I'm going to get so much crap for people saying, why are we listening to this guy? He looks like crap. And it's like, he's so skinny. He's so ugly. He's like, his body doesn't look like anything. I'm like, yeah, you spend 12 hours on a mountain bike in 98-degree heat with little food and water. Let's see how good you look, kind of thing. But I had the deadline to do. I had to make those videos. So if you ever see, especially the first like 5 or 6 of those videos, you'll see even in my face, I'm just like, oh God, like that was an absolute blast. And actually, funny enough, talking about effort versus output, largely through that ride, I was thinking to myself, this is such a waste of my time to be doing, because it was a challenge through work. And about after 3 or 4 hours in, I'm like, I really should quit this, because this is my one day off of the week. And I'm spending the whole thing suffering on a mountain bike for no good benefit at all. And when I got back, people were like, hey, was it fun? Nope. Well, it was worthwhile, right? Nope. I should have said no. Like, I regret it. I honestly regret it, because it was too much work and not enough payoff. It didn't bring me any real benefit, but it cost me an entire day, and I looked like crap for those videos. So again, hard work doesn't always pay off. Lent, hey, Lent, it's so good to see you. Hey, Matt, have you ever experienced your fart smelling twice as bad during a workout? Every time I work out, I swear my cat is on the verge of meeting his creator whenever I let one rip. So what we're talking about is when we are exercising, there's a lot of stuff in the guts that's digesting and processing and stuff. And this was happen a lot of times, like in Taekwondo, in the cycling world. It was always a classic joke of people like in a pace line, and the smell would like waft through everybody kind of stuff. So it's one of those things to just pay attention to, particularly with diet. If you are eating something like a dinner the night before and you notice, okay, this is having a gastrointestinal reaction in my workout the morning after or something, pay attention to those sorts of things. It could be something you're eating. It could also just simply be the time of day that you're consuming things as well. But it's usually because digestion is altering a little bit because blood flow is coming away from the digestion system, but at the same time, you may be moving around. It's something to investigate. It's usually a sign that something needs to be altered and moved just a little bit. Pele Chamlin, good to see you. Hey, 1% improvement each week means 168% in a year. So why work hard instead systematically? I know exactly what you mean. So that's the thing, is a lot of times when it comes to improvement, even 1% is going to be way, way unrealistic as far as a level of improvement goes. So it's one of those things to have the ability to make improvement in whatever way you can. And don't worry too much about the pace of your improvement, because any improvement's certainly going to be in the right direction. One more, and then I'll get to my last one here to finish off. Mr. Dan, hey, Matt, when do you know exactly you're done with your muscle workout? When exactly is enough? So again, it comes down to those objectives that I talk about in micro workouts. What's the objective of burning calories, in which case you just go, muscular work capacity, how hard and long are you working your muscle, and then just practice. Now, the thing is, you can always do more. You can always practice more. You can always do one more set and more reps and run another mile and stuff. You can always do more. So that's why a lot of times people are like, okay, so I'll just keep going and just assume it's going to be better for me because I don't have a definitive line. So instead of thinking, when do I achieve my objective? It's more of like, when is the workload exceeding the benefit? Because you can always do more, but you want benefit from your working out. So when it comes to your training, like your workouts, if you're pushing yourself, you should reach a point where your muscular output takes a pretty good dive. Some people, they're like, oh man, I just high volume, just set after set after set after set after set after set. And it's like, you're just not working that hard in each set. I'm sorry, but you're pacing yourself. I'm putting everything I got into it. No, you're not. I guarantee you. Like when I would do my bike races, after 4 laps, it's a 20K, I was spent. Like, hell, there was a spent after 2 laps. And I was like, I just can't keep going on this sort of thing. I got to dig deeper and deeper. So when it comes to your muscular work capacity, I always push until I'm starting to really feel like, oh God, this is really starting to get very, very exhausting. So it's like, I'll do a pull-up set and I'll do pull-ups, and I'm usually going like 8 to 10 repetitions, making it harder or easier, whatever, for the day. And then I'll just, at some point, I'll grab onto that pull-up bar and my muscles will be like, oh God, like suddenly I'm at two reps. Went from like 8 to 2. It's like, okay, I'm done. Whether I get that happen in 2 sets or 12, it doesn't matter. It's just once I start nose diving as far as my performance goes, I'm done, kind of thing. And the harder you push yourself, the faster you're going to get done. That's all there is to that. All right, so last point, and this is probably the biggest one to understand. Take this one to heart, friends. Change is terminal, in other words. So basically, if you're looking for a big change in fitness and in life, know that you're not going to survive the experience. Now, hear me out. This is what I mean by that. One of the biggest reasons why some people will fight change, and they tell me these things, is, let's say, but I'm not that kind of person. I'm not the kind of person to do that sort of thing, eat healthier, go to the gym, whatever. And I know exactly what they mean, because I used to be that kind of person. I used to be the kind of person who thought exercise was stupid. I used to be the kind of person who thought it was ridiculous to do push-ups in my bedroom before bed at night, to do exercise without being told by a coach. I used to think it was ridiculous to eat, fruits and vegetables kind of thing. But the fact of the matter is that if you stay the same way you are as a person and an individual, the changes you really want are not going to happen, because for better or for worse, our lives, our physiques, our bodies, our health, our fitness, our relationships, our living situation are to at least some degree a reflection of the kind of person we are. Now, I know there's a lot of stuff out there that tries to state the opposite of like, okay, I may be overweight and I may not be very strong, but I'm still a good person. Absolutely. Yes. I'm not saying that if you have a beer gut that you're a bad person or that you're lazy or anything like that. Not at all. But do know that everything about the big results we have in life are due to some degree, the type and kind of person we are fundamentally. How we feel about things, how we act, how we believe, how we behave around others. Now, I personally have been going through a hell of a lot of change over the past few years, moved out again here to Colorado. It's the first time I'm living on my own and stuff. I've been making huge changes in my life. And believe me, I have killed off many parts of myself. There were times when I would be like, I'm not that kind of person. This is the type of person I am and stuff. And whenever I would go through big changes, then I would find that there was a piece of me that would just kind of die off, that would no longer be there. I'm not that kind of person anymore. Yeah, it's the old adage of like, yes, that version of Matt Schifferle, yes, he would do that. And that's why I killed him. I'm dead in that regard. That part of me is no longer in existence. The old Buddhist philosophy that a lot of things technically don't exist. You're not the same person you are today than you were yesterday. The physical cells in your body, some of them have died off. As I'm rubbing my arm like this, I'm rubbing off skin cells. So new ones are coming up. So you technically don't exist in that perspective. Every cell in your body, to a large degree, will be replaced over the next some odd years. So physiologically, your body isn't the body you had 5 years ago. So we could always look at it like, okay, I'm always changing. But when it comes to our person, how we identify with, the more we hold back on, this is the kind of person I am. This is the type of ways I do things. This is how I approach this or that and stuff. The more we are shackled to the current way we are. And I've never met a single human being who's made big improvements in their life. Relationships, financial improvements, fitness, lost a lot of weight, building. I've never met anybody who's made big changes who's the same person as when they started. It's never happened. And sometimes it's not a pretty change. I've known people who are like, yeah, I used to have these friends and now we barely hang out together. I used to have this person who I thought was in my life for forever. Like people have gotten divorced. People have broken up relationships. People have different relationship changes and stuff because of how they've made these big changes. So I'm not saying this to discourage anybody. I'm just saying we've got to get real with the fact that if we want to make a big change about something in our life, a really big change. Now, I'm not talking losing a few pounds or improving your pull-up or something. I'm talking about having big things that you never had before when it comes to health and fitness and whatnot. You can't get there being the person you are now. It's going to have to change somehow. That's not to say you're bad right now, you're lazy, you're weak, or anything like that. I'm just saying you can't get there being who you are now. You have to go through those changes fundamentally of who you are as a person. But the bright side is, again, from a lot of those individuals who've made those big changes, they'll say the same thing. They'll be like, yeah, losing the weight was great. Building the muscle was great. Making a lot more money, starting my business, all these things was great. But the real benefit is, holy smokes, have I leveled up as a person. I'm more confident. I'm stronger in social situations. I do this better, that better and stuff. I'm like, personally, I'm a better person now. I've upgraded. So recognizing that these changes should and could take place, I think is one of the most important things to recognize in your ability to get what you want. Because the more you hold on to, this is the kind of person I am, the more you fight those kinds of changes. Therefore, you're fighting the very thing that you're trying to achieve as well. So in a way, big changes are terminal. You're not going to survive the process. You're going to come out the other side as a different person than you are right now. Hopefully it's all better. It's not always so much better. Sometimes people get some detrimental, like eating disorders or some bad attitudes and things about life and things. So it's not always good, in which case you still have some more growing to do. But knowing that personal change requires that level of personal change, where some of you is going to die off in order for something better to be reborn, or not reborn, just born in general, is probably one of the most empowering, game-changing things I have ever learned. And it's one of those things that I'm getting more comfortable with these days. I used to be really, really shackled to the past. And someone was always reminiscing about the good old days and stuff like that. But lately, I'm like, yep, good old days. It was all fun and games. It was very good. I talked about my cycling days here ad nauseum, but I'm more future focused now, because it's like, yep, time to move on and improve and so forth. All right. So a couple last ones here. Lucas asking, shoulder pain after every workout. Again, all pain and stuff, get it checked out. There's no way I can possibly know. You know more than I do at that sort of thing. So get it checked out by someone. Physical therapists are always a good one for that one, for the ability to address any sorts of pains. Let me see if there's some other questions that I missed. I am running long again here, folks. I do apologize. So I will let you go, actually. Don't forget, check out all the sponsors down below, including the RDP library. You get fancy shirts like this one, Paul Wade's Old School Calisthenics, sanctioned by Paul Wade himself. That's the only way you can get this shirt, through the RDP merch store. And of course, the NOSC and World Fit equipment that I highly endorse down below as well. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and listening. If you're listening to the audio versions through your podcast directory, and sincerely appreciate it. Leave reviews, subscribe, share, all that sort of stuff helps to support the show, as well as always. And I'll talk to you next week. Till then, be fit and live free.